Black History Month celebration.
Yay!
Thank you all for coming out and attending this event. Whether you're joining us virtually or you're just sitting in front of me, we hope that this event empowers you. No matter what you decide to pursue, we just want to encourage you. Racism, discrimination, and inequality are far from ending, but never let them discourage you. As Beyonce says, forgiveness is key because we're fighting something way bigger. You'll never lose. We are winners.
Amen.
I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good song. Anyways, try to remember your worth and never let anyone change your perception of it. Stand tall in the midst of it all because it always seems impossible until it's done. You can interpret this quote by Nelson Mandela in many different ways, but today let's think of it like this. Black inventor George T. Sampson created the automatic clothes dryer in 1892. People probably thought he was crazy for spending so much time working on his invention, especially as a black man in the 19th century. However, he did what some at the time would consider impossible, just like the speakers we have here today. Howard High School was the first high school in Delaware that black students could attend. In 1954, they were one of the 5 schools that played a role in the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case to desegregate schools. It is important to remember those that paved the way before us because their hard work and endurance gave us the opportunities we have today. In 1938, Jane Watson graduated from Howard High School. She got her bachelor's from the University of Delaware in 1963 and her master's from Washington College in 1969. She was the first black registered nurse in Delaware. Watson set an example of accomplishing what may seem impossible to some, and many people are encouraged by her story. So today, we want to share the stories of other minorities in the area because even though schools may no longer be segregated and Jim Crow laws are no longer in place, we are still fighting for equality, especially in the STEM field. We want to celebrate these people not only for their success, but for their dedication and endurance during times when it was even harder to be successful in America as a black person. So could I have all of our speakers stand up and could everyone give them a round of applause? Thank you so much.
So my name is George Murray, and currently I am a high school physics and science teacher at Christiana High School located in Newark, Delaware. My education is I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in applied physics from the University of Delaware. I started at Delaware State University and after 3 years transferred to the University of Delaware. The reason for my transfer in part was I was originally a mechanical engineering and aerospace major, and the program that I thought I was in was a 5-year program with the University of Delaware, 3 at Delaware State and 2 at UAD. However, once transferring to UAD, I did discover that there were some other things that needed to take place, and it was only going to extend my matriculation, and so therefore I decided to go into physics and get my degree in physics, applied physics. The years of STEM that I've been working, I did not start in education, first of all. I started as a programmer at a local credit card processing company, and after several years, I went into network administration and worked in that capacity for a number of years. Then from network administration, I went into management, and I was the manager of a data center for an organization that is now known as J.P. Morgan Chase. However, at the time, that was not what it was. That was not the name, but the organization was bought out by what became J.P. Morgan Chase. What introduced me to an interest in STEM, or how I got into the STEM field, is I've always been inquisitive. I've always enjoyed taking things apart and just to find out what made them tick, you might say. I have a niece that's very close to my age, and growing up, she had a number of different toys. specifically doll babies that were able to do flips and things of that nature. And when she would come over to the house for us to play together, and she would bring her doll babies. Of course, I had my trucks and things of that nature, but I was always curious as to what made that baby flip. And there was this doll called Thumbelina. And one day I convinced her to take it apart. So I got the screwdriver and we took Thumbelina apart so I could understand how is it that Thumbelina is able to do those tumbles. And so that was just an indication as to the inquisitive mind that I had. I enjoyed, as I said, taking things apart. And I think really that's kind of what started me down the path of just wondering, what makes this thing do that, and why does this device work so well. I think that my first official STEM job was as a computer backup operator. One day in looking over some of my experiences, I'll say from college, I did go to high school, first of all, as at a VOTEC school, and I took up welding, and that gave me an opportunity to be very hands-on in a number of different ways. But once I got to college, I started to pick up a job here, work-study job there. And one day as I was working on my resume, I noticed that I had a number of IT type of jobs, be it a data entry position, or maybe someone that was responsible for backing up a small mainframe. And there was several other positions as well that included a computer or some type of a computer operation. And so I realized that unbeknownst to me that I had an interest in computers. And so I was able to get a summer job working at one of the DuPont sites as a computer backup operator on the weekends. And from there, it kind of snowballed into other interests, as I said, programming and so forth. So that's what got me into STEM. As far as being a minority in the STEM field, there wasn't many in my different positions. There was not a lot of minorities that I saw when I went to conferences, and even within my local organization. I was, I guess, unfortunately, you could say I was a rare breed. But I think that I always had confidence in myself, and just growing up, my mother always encouraged me to be my best and that I was unique. So I didn't necessarily feel like I was out of place, but I recognized that there wasn't many people in the field that looked like me. And quite honestly, I took pride in being unique in that capacity because I felt like it was my opportunity to showcase my skills and to also let others know that I was more than able. Maybe even you could say breaking down barriers of whatever perceptions they may have had of me, that I was able to kind of eliminate those stereotypical things that I felt at times came along with being a minority. So it was at times, different being someone of African American descent in a field that was primarily occupied by white males. But I think that it made me realize that I was unique, that I was special, and that I had skills, and I didn't have to feel like I was inferior to anyone else. As far as words of encouragement, I would say to those of you that are thinking about going into STEM to dream big, that you can do it. I think sometimes we have to really apply ourselves, that there are certain habits and that we have to form. And I think one of those habits is having a thirst for knowledge in the particular area that you want to be in, and not being worried about what other people may think of you, if they call you a geek, if they say you're weird. Acknowledge it. I mean, own it. Yes, I was many times referred to as different. You know, that man, you're involved in, you think different than the rest of us, and I was okay with that. I had no problems being different. I wanted to be different. I'm unique. We're all unique. So I would say to you, don't be afraid to be unique, to be called different, or be called a nerd, or be called strange. It's okay. And I would like to say that be thirsty as well, thirsty for knowledge of that area that you're interested in pursuing in STEM. So I hope that my little overview, or my information that I've shared with you is encouraging. And I would say go for it. Take on the world. Thank you so much for your time.
You know, it's always, you can always learn. I actually majored in Black studies, but I used to stay with my uncle every summer, and I had an uncle that always said, knowledge is power. No matter what you do in life, they cannot take that away from you. So by the time I went to college, my uncle made you, when I stayed with him in the summer, he made you read a book every week. And I was like, I'm on vacation, I gotta read. And he selected the book you had to read. So I had to read books on Black history, and I had to read books on American Indian history, because part of my family was Native American. So by the time I went to the University of Delaware, I already had read every single book in their Black Studies program. So I tested out of every single class. I came out with 2 degrees. I came out with a degree in political science, and I came out with a degree in African American studies. And then I went back to school, started taking IT classes like I told you. And in 1994, I received a 2nd degree from the University of Delaware in computer science. But there is plenty of opportunity out here. Go to school. I have people on my job who are like, why you want to learn that? Why you want? Because like I told you, knowledge is something that no one ever can take away from you. My uncle he just passed this year. He was 90 years old. He had 4 PhDs. And he read every day that I've known him. There was never a day that he did not read. And it's nothing wrong with reading. You know, you can even write your own books. If you don't like the books you read, write your own books. But that's just all I want to say is keep going to school. No matter what anybody says to you, just keep learning. Your brain is like a sponge. You never can learn enough. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cornelia. So next up, we will have Mr. Ray Rhodes.
James Ray Rhodes, too. I'm a native Wilmingtonian. I feel like I'm at a class reunion. My good classmate Angie's here. My classmate Brownie's here. We came out of Howard in 1981. I probably have a distinction. I don't know if a lot of people have it, but I'm proud of it. I have a distinction. I like to say I grew up in probably every neighborhood here in Wilmington. I grew up in Riverside. My mother, single mother, raised 2 children. We left Riverside, we went to Southbridge. So we left Southbridge, went to Northside, 408 West 30th Street. And then we left Northside, went over the West Side up top, and I lived up West Side down the bottom. Then, of course, I spent time on the East Side where I went to school. I was very, very excited to be able to come here to talk to you about my path into architecture. And it started, I would say, back in 1968. I was a young child here in Wilmington, and we were, like most cities, I would say under fire. Dr. King had been assassinated, and my grandfather would walk me up and down the street right here, right over Market Street, when we were starting to talk about how we were going to rebuild our city. And I would ask him, what are we going to need to do? He said, well, we're going to need architects, we're going to need engineers, we're going to need contractors. And at that young, bright age, I was, what does an architect do? I wanted to know what an architect did, what was a contractor, what was an engineer. And then as he explained it to me, I knew that I wanted to be an architect. So I did everything I needed to do to be an architect. I studied architecture as a young child. I would say 7, 8 years old, studying buildings, going through buildings, looking at buildings, he would bring me down. And this building, other buildings, and I was just be enamored with the physicalness of the buildings and, you know, the different styles. So as luck would have it, or fate would have it, I would say, I ended up going to Howard, and that was one of the few brave times in my life that I told my mother no. She, of course, at that time, desegregation had started, and she wanted me to go to Newark High School, get on a bus and travel in the morning for an hour and a half to schools where people didn't want to be with me. I'm like, I'm not doing it, absolutely not. So she said, okay, well, if you're going to do it, it's going to make it work. So I lived on the west side at the time, and I caught the bus, city bus, every day. I caught the city bus over to Howard High School, and I took up technical drafting. During that time, Angie and Ellsworth can attest to this, we had instructors there who were very, I would say, enamored and ingrained with our educational process. Sam Brown, and I had Miss Steele, Miss Raymond, Miss McLeod would always say, well, if you want to go to school for architecture, you're going to need to know math. You're going to have to sit down in this class and do math. And, you know, like Brownie and Angie, math became, to me, was almost like a hobby. I was enamored with numbers. I was not defeated when I couldn't get a problem right. And then in 10th grade, something happened that was phenomenal. I brought 2 C's home on my report card, and I also had 2 B's and an A. And most people, that was like, yo, that's a good report card, right? That's great. My mom wasn't happy. She was like, you're not average. When you get a C, you average. She said, you're not good, you're not great, you're not bad, you're not horrible. You're average. She's like, you're better than average. Amen. So what happened? I had to stay in my room for 12 weeks. I couldn't go out, couldn't play sandlot, football, basketball. Little girl I was chasing quit me. I mean, I had a bad life for 12 weeks. I couldn't do nothing. So what did I do? I went in that room and I studied. I studied everything. So 6 marking periods, or I would say 6 straight marking periods later, I got straight A's. And, you know, until we got to Miss Smith class, and, you know, couldn't get an A in English in 12th grade, so, you know, you had to do everything. But then it really proved the message to me that if I dedicated myself to education, dedicated myself to my studies, that I would really be able to do good. So, get to senior year, and the school that I wanted to go to, my dream school was Hampton University, but Hampton didn't accept me. They said my SAT scores was too low. So I'd say, okay, I'm just going to study. I'm going to take the SAT again. By that time, my junior year, I went to Ohio State University for a summer intern engineering camp. And Ohio State not only accepted me, but they offered me a scholarship. My mom said, you going to Ohio State. We poor, man. We got no money. We going to Ohio State. And of course, you know, I got accepted by 3 or 4 other schools. Of course, I wanted to go to a local school, Delaware. Delaware State didn't have architecture. So I get to Ohio State. And, you know, I played football at Howard, and we probably had 200 fans at our games. I mean, if we played a good school, I get to Ohio State and I get on campus, there's 80,000 people at the football game. Wow. Ohio State at that time was the largest on-campus school in the country. But guess what? It was too cold, it was too big, it was too white. I said, I can't deal with it. So I told my mom, I said, I don't like it. She said, well, you gotta do something. You can't go to Hampton. That ain't accepted. You gotta do something. So I came home. And prior to that, me and George Murray, who I think you will hear from earlier later, we got an appointment to the Naval Academy because, you know, we had great grades and we did phenomenal things. And as life comes full circle, the senator who gave us that appointment was President Joe Biden. But I didn't want no part of the military. You know, I wanted to go to school to be an architect. So I left Ohio State after 1 year. I met some great guys, Clark Kellogg, Tim Spencer, football players, Art Sleester. Met a lot of great guys, made some friends. Of course, you know, I enamored myself into the environment, even though it was really big. And I was one of the last freshmen that came on campus, so they put me in a room with 3 white guys. And of course, I taught them Run DMC, LL Cool J. I just taught them the culture, Booker T. Washington, all the stuff that I knew. I taught them the stuff that I learned in school. So it wasn't a matter of assimilating, it was just a matter of it just wasn't the environment for me, because growing up in an inner city, urban school like Howard, we had a few white people, some Spanish people at school, but it was predominantly black. So I left Ohio State, I came home, I worked at General Motors for maybe 3 months, and then they had to cut back and let me go. So my mom said, you gotta do something, you can't lay around here and not work. She said, you got to do something. What do y'all think I did? Anybody? Take a guess.
Went to the military.
I went to the United States Navy.
Yeah.
I went to the Navy. I got on what they call the GI Bill, and what the GI Bill does is put money aside for you to get your education. So I didn't go the traditional route. Like right after high school, I went on the GI Bill. I was stationed in Norfolk, which was what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from Hampton. And when I was stationed down there, guess who was down there? Angie, a couple of my other classmates. So I was on Hampton's campus every weekend. I'm like, I'm coming back to school here. I'm coming back. So I manifested. I put an atmosphere. So I stayed in the Navy the whole time. I knew I wasn't going to make a career of it. I met some great friends. I had an opportunity to work for the admiral in charge of the Pacific Fleet and the Atlantic Fleet, directly on their staff in cryptology, which again was one of those things where I said, man, science and technology is incredible. So I stayed 4 years. I was stationed on USS Virginia for 6 months, met some great friends, great people. I spent 2 years on Hawaii, which was the best vacation ever. So I got out and I came home and I worked for DuPont. They had a draftsman position open at DuPont. So I worked at DuPont. I did that for about 6 months, and then I worked for a local architecture firm just to get some experience. And then in, I think it was probably the fall of '90, I made the determination that I was going back to school. I had already applied to Hampton, they accepted me. I didn't have a whole lot of money. At that time I had a daughter who was 6, 7 years old. So I was growing up, I was maturing into an adult, and fatherhood started becoming the priority. So I said, I can't live out my dreams. I can't not live out my dreams and then expect my daughter to do the same thing. So I packed everything up I had in a little car, drove down to Hampton, and what was ironic is I had a $5,000 tuition bill, but I only had $500 in my pocket. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but you know, I thought that a little bit of faith wouldn't hurt. So I got down to Hampton. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I didn't know too much. So I did get an appointment with I would call probably the guy who probably saved my architecture career. I had went to register like 8 times. Mr. Fred Pierce said, "You don't have enough money. I can't let you in." So I would go back to my car, change my clothes, and try to get to a line where he wasn't at. He was like, "Didn't I tell you no?" I'm like, "You ain't got enough." And I was okay. You told me no. Who can tell me yes? So only 2 people can tell you yes, and one of you ain't gonna get to see. That's the president of the university. The only shot you got is to see Dr. White, Lucius White. You know, his office is going to be closed in a few days. A few hours, and if you don't get over there now, so where's his office at? I ran across campus, got to see Dr. White, came in, he says, "Young man, what you got?" So I gave him my bill, and he says, "This is a world-class institution. We just can't let people in that don't have money." He says, "How you gonna pay for this?" Then I explained to him that I was in the military, and the military payments don't kick in until you can show enrollment in school, not acceptance, enrollment. So I said, I gotta get enrolled before I get this money. And I said, I can't get this money if I don't get enrolled. He says, "Well, I'm gonna take a chance on it." So I took a chance on it. He said, "Don't let me down." And he stamped my thing approved. The rest was history. I did whatever I needed to do. It got hard. You know, I had to take calculus. Calculus was challenging. I remember that 12 weeks I spent in that room with them 4 walls and nothing else. I remember studying, put myself in the books. And by that time, Angie was down there. She would let me come over and do my laundry. You know, so the village was starting to come. So I ended up graduating from Hampton. I ended up having this runner-up for best thesis. I invited Dr. Wyatt to my thesis presentation. He came and watched it. He was so proud. So I had already, you know, said that at that point in time that it was so challenging because architecture is one of those fields where, again, it's the art and science of building a building. And not only are we concerned with building the building, we're also concerned with keeping the building standing up. So we had to learn structure. You see these columns, see these beams, you have to calculate the sizes of them. When you go into any architectural building, you just look up and you just look at, you know, just think about how does that building stand? Through earthquakes and through the dynamics of everything that happens, that building still needs to stand. So that was phenomenal to me, so being able to study that. So I came home, I worked for 3 or 4 architectural design firms here. I had the pleasure of working on the single most, the highest dollar value project in the state, the Leonard Williams Courthouse. I designed the floors, the judges' chambers on the 6th, 7th, and 8th floor. Right. And I was with Buck Simpson. So I did that, and then I had the fortunate, when you were in architecture school, like most career fields, you study case studies, you study different buildings, you study different eras, you study different architects. When I was at Hampton, we studied an architect called I.M. I.M. did the building right up here on 12th and, 12th and Market. And I got an opportunity to work at Princeton University in the building construction department. And Princeton hires world-class architects. And one of the architects they hired was I.M. So I.M. has designers, senior designers, and they have other, low level, I wouldn't say low level, they have other designers who are not equipped with going out to all the big projects. So this one particular project we were working on, I.M. walked into the conference room. And I'm just stunned, because I studied this architect in school, right? So when we were working on the project manager described that I was going to be in charge of receiving the payments, in charge of receiving their request for payment. So he took out of his briefcase a request for payment for a particular project he was working on. My supervisor set me down, showed me how to work on it, and showed me how to sign it. So here I was signing off on a payment request for an architect I studied in school. So that was a phenomenal experience. Yeah. Came back to Wilmington, worked with a few more design firms. Then I had, again, something that I never expected in my career. But sometimes when you work and you stay true to what you're doing, your passion and your purpose meet. I got a call from Mayor Williams, Dennis Williams, that he wanted me to be the commissioner of license and inspection. So here I was, little boy growing up, Riverside, Southbridge, housing projects, single mother raising 2 children. All I had was a dream to be an architect, but never in my wildest dreams did I expect to be in charge of all the building, all the construction, all the zoning, all the permitting of the city that I grew up in. So I spent 3 years in license and inspection. During that time, we didn't have not one work injury. We didn't have not one injury from our inspectors, any of that. So those are the things we're proud to talk about. Currently, today I serve as and I'll talk about this transition, I serve as the executive director for Christina Cultural Arts Center. We've taken STEM and we've turned it into STEAM by incorporating the arts. If you just look around this room, look at the arts. I mean, look how inspiring it is. When you walk around and see this, arts is inspiring. And what we're trying to do at Christina now, which is great for me, is we're trying to get students to be able to live their passion through art and also to get more students interested in architecture. I spent 30-some years as a mathematics tutor. I also didn't mention that I went back to school to get my master's in teaching. I was a certified middle school math teacher because I found a lot of the students who were coming to me couldn't do math, couldn't do the fundamentals, and they were intimidated by math. And so I wanted to be able to find a way to be able to get them over those intimidations. So I spent 3 years in the classroom, and today we're using art to be able to inspire students. And Brownie mentioned it, you talk about it, mathematics, I tell you, it touches everything that we do. You just think about, what are they talking about now? The numbers are what? Decreasing. When you talk about the language of mathematics, you're going to talk about what increases, what decreases, what's multiplication, what's division. So we try to teach students the language, just like English, mathematics has a language. And learning that language, learning what's a variable, what's a polynomial. Once you learn the language, it's easier to be able to do it. So that's very important in what we're doing. So again, learning about money, learning about finances, learning about all the things that touch society. Math touches everything, absolutely everything. So we try to make that a priority of what we do down there. I think I would say that probably the most rewarding thing that I've done in mathematics or in this field is be able to teach mathematics. And when you get a student who was intimidated by math, and then you're able to teach that to them, and then you can ask that student to come up to the board and teach it to the class, that means they've grasped that concept. That aha moments went off. They got over all that intimidation. Now it's not a fear factor anymore. Now it's like, can you give me something harder? So then we had students who wanted to be challenged. I had one student who was a skateboarder, just very quiet, didn't want to come to class, never had problems with students. I never threw a child out of my class because if I did, that meant he wasn't learning. I would take him out of the classroom and talk about let's refocus our behavior, whatever. So there's one particular student, I found out he loved skateboards. So then I started crafting his lessons based on skateboards. Johnny went to the store and bought 6 skateboards, and he had four wheels that were out. How many would he need? And his grades just shot up.
Yes.
I mean, just using little small, simple things like that. Came to class eager, ready to learn. So that was rewarding because you're able to help a lot of children in there. Again, introduced to a STEM field very early. I think it was probably was Mr. Sam Brown who told me the importance of being able to why science was important. He was a science teacher. Why science was important to be able to learn architecture, and of course we had to know that architecture was a science and an art to building. So learning about science and the technology part. Now everything's done on the computer, AutoCAD. Before we had to do everything by hand. Now you can just go in and punch out a design on the computer and print it out in literally 2 or 3 hours. So technology has played a very important part of that. Being a minority in the field is, I think it was quite, I would say, it was just, in a way it was depressing because right now in the United States there's 65,000 architects and only 1.8% of them are African Americans. So we need more minorities in that field. I like the fact that I'm in a position now where I can introduce architecture to students at a cultural arts center, to get them interested in addition to math and science and technology. After 25 years of sitting behind a computer, drawing, designing buildings, meeting architects, it became a time of, Brownie mentioned, Angie mentioned, our city is under siege. We need young people to be able to embrace that. And I can't do that behind a desk. After 25 years of architecture, it became time for me to pursue a passion. That's why I went and taught for 3 years, and now this leadership position in the arts has allowed me to do that. And I think that's probably more rewarding than designing a building when you can take a child and change their trajectory by using mathematics, using STEM, using architecture to be able to get them to do that. I grew up in an environment where the same opportunities that our students are facing were presented to me, but I knew that architecture was going to be my plight, so I was able to say no. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not going that direction. No, I don't want to do that. No, this has nothing to do with architecture. I'm not doing it. Absolutely not. So we need more people to be able to do that with our young students, and that's what we're teaching our students at Christina. For example, we're teaching them how to beat on drums, and we talk about rhythms. We talk about how this can let you get some of your frustrations out instead of beating on each other, in particular our women. We teach them how to shoot cameras. You guys shooting cameras, we talk about how this is helping our industry instead of shooting guns, and then they can act out on stages and they can get structured drama lessons. We talk about the Denzels, the Felicia Rashads, all those actors and actresses and what they're doing instead of acting out in their classrooms and acting out in their schools. So we had the uprising a couple years ago. We're confident that none of the Christina students were taking a part of that because we teach them how to act out and do it in a way that's structured. Words of encouragement I would give is just pursue your dream. Find out what it is, what your passion is, find out what it is early, and give 1,000% to it. You can't take shortcuts. Again, when you sit in a room for 12 weeks and you can't do nothing but open up a book, you're going to learn some things. Learn early. I always say, what would I tell my 12-year-old self, my 7-year-old self is, pick up more books. I think too, I probably own more books than anything else. By the time I left Hampton, I probably had about 80 books that I knew nothing about in high school, so I kept on that same path. Read, it's a great way to be able to just get self-knowledge when you can't get it otherwise. And don't listen to the naysayers. Folks are gonna tell you can't do this, you can't do that. Don't believe it. Believe yourself, believe in yourself. Despite where you come from, despite where you are probably more in control of your destiny than anybody else. They might say the white man controls that, they control this. No, you control it. Because if you don't believe it, you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in the hard work that it takes, you don't believe that you can sacrifice, give up that TV, give up that game, put that controller down, pick up a book, read something, ask questions. I would always ask students, if you asked a question in my class, you would get extra points. But sometimes students want to sit back and not say much. So before they left class, I would check off to make sure everybody asked a question, extend the lesson. challenge your teachers. Ask them explain to me why this is that. Explain to me why E equals MC squared. Explain this Pythagoras theorem to them. Make them teach you the things that you don't know. And lastly, again, I was introduced, I talked about that, and I talked about what's it like being a minority. Even today, I would say, you have to be proud of who you are. We can't change who we are. We can't do it. We can change a lot of things. We can change the clocks. We can change a lot of things, but we can't change who we are. You got to be proud of it. I grew up knowing who I was, being comfortable with who I was, not being afraid to tell people what was on my mind, not being able to share what my hopes and dreams were. So be proud of who you are, and embrace it, and let others know that you're just as proud as you are. So thank you very much. Yeah, so what we try to do is we try to have one every other year. We had one last year, so we try to incorporate music into. We have a phenomenal teacher who talks about beats per minute, so we try to incorporate that into the music lessons. I played saxophone in 6th and 7th grade, and never touched it again. Just 2 years ago, I picked it back up, and I'm learning different chords, and how all of that's related to mathematics. So we won't be having a summer program this year. We'll be having one next year. And because of the pandemic, I'll say this and then I'll get out of the way. Because of the pandemic, we were offered a lot of money to be able to keep the doors of Christina open. So right now, we have full scholarships for anybody that want to take a music, dance, drama class. All you gotta do is come down, enroll in for the spring, fall term starts in August, but you can take probably 2 classes on a full scholarship for 2 consecutive terms.
I was gonna say this when I spoke, but since you're talking, I want to reiterate, music is math.
That's right.
I taught music for a while, actually I think that just stopped, so I encourage all children to take some form of music in school. It will increase your math skills, it is proven. It will increase math skills and your ability to process. Music is math.
And lastly, one of the things we're doing in addition to that, we're teaching students to change their language, and again, just don't listen to everything you hear, because what does it mean when they say we're an at-risk child? The pandemic has proven that we're all at risk, right? They don't say, oh, you're at risk, Angela, you at risk. They only refer to at-risk children when it's inner city, urban, young black children. I don't hear them talking about at-risk, nothing else. Because we're trying to change the language. We stricken the words at risk from any of our grant requests. It's all at promise. We all at promise. All of our young students are at promise. When you start to tell them, they start to think it, they start to hear it, they'll realize that they're at promise. So let's not refer to our children as at risk.
You got a question, Rick? We have a granddaughter who's interested in taking piano lessons, although we live in Smyrna. So what I'm wondering is, do you have remote training?
Yes, we have two piano instructors, and if we need to add a third for virtual classes, as long as they have a piano in front of them, we do virtual classes as well. And the scholarships are not just for young children, it's for adults as well. Any age. I'm Angie and Brownie's age. What y'all, 58? No.
Y'all don't look 58.
Christina, go to our center website is www.ccacde.org.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, especially for giving out the resources for the Christiana Cultural Arts Center. You guys should definitely look into that.
Yes.
So our next speaker will be Mr. Rob T.
Everyone, first, thank you again for setting this up. It's been great to hear so many empowering black folks that are doing the right thing, both in the world of technology and business. A little bit about me. I'm also a native Wilmingtonian. I was born and raised a few blocks from here, and I lived on the west side, east side. And in fact, my technology career was pretty much based in Wilmington. I've worked at JPMorgan Chase, I've worked at Bank of America, MBNA, Citi. And what I do is I'm a technology risk manager with a focus on third-party risk management. That's a fancy way of saying when your credit card data gets stolen, my job is to make sure that the folks that stole it, we can either recover it or we can prevent it from being stolen in the future. So I'm gonna, before I get more in my career, what I do and more about me, I'm gonna put some words out for the young folks. You're not smart enough. You don't have a degree. I've got somebody better than you. Those are all things that I heard in my career. All right? And my path to what I do is different than Miss Angie's and everyone else's. I wasn't able to go to school right away. I grew up in Wilmington, public assistance, right? I had to figure out how I was gonna get to where I am. Luckily for me, I had a network of friends. I had some very good teachers in high school. I went to Wilmington High. Well, old Wilmington High, not Cat, old Wilmington High. I had a very good network of teachers there that saw something. I don't know what, because I wasn't a good student. I wasn't. But saw something to encourage me. And what that encouragement led me to do was to get involved in sports, to get involved in music. Music is math. Now, I wasn't good at math, but I was great at music. Through that network of friends, that network of teachers that I stayed connected with, even after I got out of school, I didn't go to college right away. I had to get a job. I had to help the family, right? Some of us have to do that as adults, right? But what I was able to do was to start kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I lucked into my technology career by a friend of mine was working for a company now called Versaline. It used to be called Ameristar. Who here works for the state? Anybody here works for the state? Nobody? Yeah, no, you work for the state. You work for the state. But the company that I worked for, what they did was they supplied all the technology equipment, both people for cabling and other technology projects, as well as the actual devices that state employees use. That's what that company did. My buddy was a salesman there, a guy I went to high school with. Hey, they need somebody to come and do customer service. At the time, I was working at Cigna Cigna Healthcare as a customer service agent. They need somebody to come in and be a customer service rep. Okay, I took the job, I took the interview because my buddy was pressuring me on the interview. I got the job, and within a day or two of having that job, I was like, this computer thing's kind of cool. You know, there's these guys that are building things. These guys are going out to these other companies and they're putting things up at these banks. And I may want to learn this. So there's a white guy named John Padilla who was in what we call the Build Center. And what they did was when somebody ordered a new computer, they put the NIC card, which is the network card. They put the memory in based on the specs of the computer. What I did was, my lunch hour, I just go there and just talk to John and just watch what he was doing. He realized that I had a passion for just learning this stuff. And so whenever he was doing something new or different, brought me along. By the time I left that company, I was leading the customer service area, which included the build process. So John's team would do what I told them to do for the computer, right, to build the computer. Fast forward, that company's having issues. JP Morgan, at the time, First USA, was one of our big accountants. I made some contacts there. They needed someone to come in and learn this technology, computer, and information security thing. Okay, I'll come in, I'll figure it out, right? Fast forward 10 years, I'm the only African-American person that's doing information security risk management for JP Morgan Chase, for at the time, First USA was turned into Bank One. Bank One then turned into JP Morgan Chase. I ended up leading the corporate investment bank, third-party risk management department. So I forget who was saying, I think it was the gentleman from the Air Force. There's some power in being the only brother in the room. When you're on the phone with someone and people talk to me on the phone, you can't tell I'm a black guy when you talk to them on the phone, right? This is before Zoom, this is before, all that stuff. You talk to me on the phone and you know that I'm coming to do an audit of your company. Because that's what I did and now what my teams do. You talk to me, you're expecting Rob T, the white guy, to walk in. I've walked into FIS. I've walked into Bear Stearns. I'll talk about Bear Stearns in a minute when they were in existence. And the person that comes down to meet me, who I've been talking to for 3 weeks doing all the prep work, is like, "You're Rob?" "Yeah, I'm Rob." Now come and show me your network diagram to let me start playing. Right? So it's being an African American or any minority, quite frankly, or a woman in this field is tough. There are some preconceived notions that you don't know what you're talking about, right? So going back and talking a little bit about the Bear Stearns thing, some of the things I've done in my career, specifically in JP Morgan Chase, and I'll talk about where I am now, but during my time at JP Morgan Chase, I worked on two really cool projects. One, JP Morgan was in the process of buying this Mexican bank and merging it into the JP Morgan Chase portfolio. So they flew me down to Mexico City. I don't speak a lick of Spanish. They fly me down to Mexico City to do an audit of the Mexican company. Because I live on the west side and I played baseball in the old Prado League, I knew a little bit of Spanish, just enough to get by. And they're putting things up on the screen and I'm deciphering in Spanish what's on the screen. And the Mexican guys who are in the room are like, you said you didn't speak Spanish, but I know enough to figure out what that document says, right? Fast forward to the end of that project, I'm doing a conference call. It's me, different executives from throughout the company, briefing them on where we are with this project. And I see Jamie Dimon pop up on my conference call. Everyone know who Jamie Dimon is? He's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Pops up on my conference call and I immediately froze because I didn't understand at the time. I'm a 28-year-old kid. I didn't understand at the time the scope of what I was doing. Fast forward, JP Morgan Chase buys Bear Stearns. They send me to New York. I have no idea why I'm doing an audit of Bear Stearns. I'm just going to go to New York and eat at Michael Jordan's Steakhouse in the Grand Central Station. The reason they set me up there was because they needed me to do an initial risk management exam of Bear Stearns security control before we merged JP Morgan Chase merger. Again,
will be closed at quarter of, along with the computer lab. Doors will not be reopened.
Okay. So again, Jamie Dimon is now, my work is on Jamie Dimon's desk, the head of JP Morgan Chase. So kids, just because you come from Wilmington, I wasn't good at math, I wasn't a good student, doesn't mean that you can't have a trajectory. Your picture, your model, your path doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's. Figure out what you want to do. All right, figure out what you want to do, and then you can get there. So what I do now, I'm the Senior Director of Third-Party Risk Management Governance for Freddie Mac. What Freddie Mac does is we provide financing to the mortgage industry for mortgages. So you think you get a mortgage from Wells, Chase, or whoever, and those folks own your mortgage. They actually don't. So usually they sell that to a Freddie, a Fannie, a Ginnie Mae, and then they get money so they can put it back into the industry. I mean, it does finance, knows that well, I'm sure, right? So what my job today is I've got responsibility for ensuring that from a risk management governance perspective, we've got coverage from a risk and exposure and managing those risk and exposure. There's math there. Again, not great in math, but good enough to understand thresholds, limits, and understand whether folks are trending in the right direction. And when someone talks about trends, right? Trending up or down to meet those limits or expectations. So again, you've got the opportunity, given the education that's out there, given the network of people that are there to assist you to get into these types of fields, all right? There are organizations, not only social organizations, but even companies understand that there's a lack of African Americans and women in the technology space, right? There are drives and there's money behind some of these organizations, even from the government, to help increase those numbers, right? So to that point, there's folks, whether it's transparent or not, there are opportunities there, and there's an avenue for you to get into this world. So again, words of encouragement. Someone said it, stole it from me, but I'm going to say it again. Find your passion. If you find that thing that you can do, whether it's in technology or not, but you find that thing that makes you happy, you'll enjoy doing it. If you're miserable at what you do, you're going to be miserable all the time, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to essentially hate your life, right? Find that thing that you have passion and energy around, and you're willing to get up every day and go, I can't wait to tackle fill in the blank. That's pretty much it. I didn't really have much prepared, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Out for myself, and I look across the water, and I think think of all the things, what you're doing, and in my head I paint a picture. Since I come home, well, my body's been missed, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come on over, stop making a fool out of me? Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie? Valerie, oh, 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 Valerie. Valerie. Did you have to go to jail? Put your house on up for sale. Did you get a good lawyer? I hope you didn't catch a tan. I hope you find the right man who will fix it for you. You know you're shopping anywhere. Change the color of your hair and I could be. And did you have to pay that fine that you were dodging all the time? Are you still busy? Oh, since I come on home, well, my body's been a mess, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Oh, won't you come on over, stop making a fool out of me? Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie? Oh, Valerie. Oh, 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 Valerie. Oh, Valerie. Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water, and I think of all the things, what you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Oh, oh, since I come home, well, my body's been a mess, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Oh, won't you come on over, stop making a fool. Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie? Oh, Valerie. Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie? Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie, 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 Valerie? Oh, won't you come on over, Valerie, Valerie? Oh, won't you come on over,
That was such an amazing performance, Brenda. Thank you so much. So next up, I think we'll have Caesar Rodney. He'll be doing a few of his pieces for us.
How's everybody doing? Good. My name is Caesar Rodney. That might sound familiar to some of you, maybe all of you. I'm from Delaware. You just took down the statue right over there. So that's Caesar Rodney. He was a white man. Just throughout that whole Black Lives Matter movement. But why my name is Caesar Rodney is because I am Wilmingtonian, and I was being on Rodney Street. My name actually being Rodney, you get those comparisons. So I thought, why not take ownership of it, be the new Caesar Rodney, you know? At some point, I just believed that when you Google Caesar Rodney, maybe one can see him. That's the type of change I'm trying to do. The song is called Black On. I'm sorry I'm going to have to do it through the phone. I don't know how loud that is. But at least you can hear me rap, huh? I got something black on. I got my uncle here. He had a black on coat. I was pretty proud of that. Right.
I know more about the Holocaust than I do the slave trade. In the grade school curriculum, ripping Beyblades. In the same phase, I'm tripping just for my namesake. Just to save face, be pimping all of your main things. Snow bunnies here, snow bunnies there. We can touch the great white hope, just won't call it fair. I can drive the same damn boat, Kodak I swear. This can make a whole new joke down in Delaware. Black on black crime is anything. Black on my time is everything. My band, we rap so tight. But y'all got wedding rings, we seen our black as white. So yeah, we dead in things. Monsters from the alley in this room. Monsters from the alley in this room. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Teachers told me that the cows go moo. Streets then told me that the Glocks go boom. Monsters from the alley in this room. Monsters from the alley in this room. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. They just think they fresh to death with dog protect your neck. Cause we've been dying for a piece of your peace cause and effect. They wanna eat good, sleep good, stay good. If taking chains, started changing things, yeah, I would. We let a showboat to those that ain't got it. That's how we get you up out it. The slave trade had the same look around it. They gonna tell us how the country was founded. You ever think to listen how they be sounded? Crazy. So black on black crime is anything. Black on my time is everything. My band, we rap so tight. But y'all got wedding rings, we seen our black as plight. So yeah, we dead in things. Monsters from the alley in this room. Monsters from the alley in this room. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Caskets in the attic with the... Alright, hold up. Now, do I really want to rap, y'all? No, and I can get no play unless I act, y'all. They gon' hop up on my eye till I'm blackballed. Either faking that you hard or you act soft. It's crazy. Monsters from the alley in this room. Monsters from the alley in this room. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Teachers told me that the cows go moo. Streets then told me that the Glocks go boom. Monsters from the alley in this room. Monsters from the alley in this room. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Caskets in the attic with the tombs. Thank y'all. That was the first song. I appreciate y'all listening. I'm also a visual artist. I didn't bring any paintings out. Left it all in school. I drove down from Baltimore just to come here today. I go to an art school in Baltimore. It's called MICA. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Mandela Institute College of Art. All my stuff is in frame now, so I was like, yeah, just skip it. Do the music for y'all. This next song I'm going to do is called Black Owned. Oh, I just did that one, sorry. This one's called Day of the Dead. I wrote it because one of our friends committed suicide, and I was just like, you know, what could make somebody like hate their life so much that they would take a chance to like, you know, see what's after. Like, that's kind of a crazy thought. You know, you get survivor's guilt, but you just did more. You know, you should just reach out more. And as an artist, it's an outlet. So I had to write a song. What y'all really talking about? Okay, this word of mouth, and I'm the one you heard about. It's cause I'm lurking about. You seen the boy, liquor pours, he hurting now. He pray love, appetite be thick when you crave love. When everybody quits, so you don't budge. When everybody sticks, so you still stuck, banging. These Delaware pitfalls won't leave us hanging. I was well aware shifts stall when you need changing. I was unprepared by far, like how I gave and I surprised myself. And no, we never needed cause to apply the wealth. Just know, I was there, you was there, he was there. Even the lost souls we ride for, they see us clear. Before I disappear, here's what I would buy for you. Before I disappear, here's what I would rhyme for you. Before I disappear, just know that I would die for you. And no, I'm not gonna leave you here, so when I lie to you, just be the... It'll leave me depressed and taking no meds. I hear your voice in my head. It's the day of the dead. The day you was dead. You told me call you back. How to I forget? My biggest regret. My biggest upset. Playing phone card tag and you ain't hit me back yet. Just know that I ain't staying around. Yes, I'm 6 foot deep in depth. From my perspective, I see your hands out. I'm speaking of a hand-me-down or handout. The nigga saying, remember when I gave you gas to move about your man's house? Remember when I got you past the moment you felt down bad? Thought that there was more to life. What's suicide on forecast? Yeah, they desperate, ain't they? See what kind of cards they pull? Magic tricks, spades and shit. Stacking up their arsenal? I needs that. Now here's another excuse you believe to receive that. Let's make another truce. You play the fool and pay your dues. Starting with me, I just hope you know that I get paid in full. Fuck your plate analogies, talking like I get paid in food. I ain't eating sure, but don't the girls love the linky dudes? I'm just killing myself. Think I can't mess with you. Yeah, we poison all until I seen just what money do. How I'm trying to follow you. This is the day I was dead. You told me call you back. Come on, my biggie, come on. The singer couldn't be here today, guys. Sorry. He did well. Thanks. I appreciate this. I'm gonna send you back here again. Hopefully we can do this another time. Maybe next year you want to do this annually. I'm gonna come back for it.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Amazing.
Thanks.
I am Angela Mason Butcher, and I'm just so honored to be here. Before I start my presentation, I want to thank Ms. Anaya for inviting me. And by the way, everyone, Avi I.T, she is the owner of Avi I.T, and I'm so proud of her because this is your first year in college. Yeah. So the I.T is doing outreach in STEM already on teaching kids how to code, which is computer software, before she even started college. So I'm so proud of her. And but when she asked me if I can present, I told her eagerly, I said yes, because I desire to be a positive role model, not just for the youth, but for all people. Because we know in this world we live in now, there's so much negativity. Yes. So I hope to be a positive role model to survive in this. And as part of my presentation at the end, I'm going to share some specific tips that hopefully will help you to succeed in this technological world. So I'm going to share a little bit of background about myself. First of all, I forgot to mention that I am from Wilmington, Delaware. I live in the Washington, D.C. area now on the Maryland side, but I am from Wilmington, Delaware. And I'm going to share some background of my work experience. I work for NASA, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my work at NASA, and then share some personal information of some connections that I have with the women of Hidden Figures. And then lastly, share the specific tips I talked about to help you succeed. So, as I mentioned, I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up on Bennett Street. But back in the day, it wasn't as bad as it is now. We had a sense of community. Yes. But yes, I am from Bennett Street, from East Side. Oh, wow. Only 4 houses? Wow. So that's where I'm from, and I don't know if Anaya mentioned, but I worked for NASA. So after I finished school, I moved to Virginia, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about that later. But I went to Drew Powell Elementary School. Is anybody familiar with Drew Powell?
Oh, yes.
So that's the elementary school that I went to, and then the middle school I went to was Bancroft, and everybody knew Bancroft. Not only are they known for their academics, but also for sports, having a lot of basketball competitions. And that's where I went to middle school, and I would like to say that in the 6th grade, when I started middle school at Bancroft, is where I got my passion for mathematics. I had a teacher, Miss Davis, she had a math contest, and I won that contest. And I remember it was I did a ruler with the metric system, because we learned about the metric system. And I remember a little quote I had on my project, I know I'm cool, I went to metric school. And so I won that contest, and from there on, I even got more excited about math. Then later, I decided to go to Howard Career Center, which is now Howard School of Technology. So I went to Howard, and I majored in data processing. And I just knew that computer science, or anything in computers, that was the way to go. Because I knew that, that was the up and coming field. Because at the time, they were using punch cards. It was like the beginning takeoff of computers and IT. And that's what I majored in. So during the day, the early morning section, I did all my college prep courses like English, math, social studies. And then in the afternoon, I took data processing. And And from that, I was able to co-op at DuPont. So that was my first experience working. I worked in a computer center, so that was my first experience working, you know, IT. And then I decided to go to college, and I went to Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, and I majored in mathematics with a minor. They didn't offer minors back then, but you could say a minor in computer science. And then I also earned over 30 hours in engineering. And I'll say that I got those engineering courses from Thomas Nelson Community College. So I just don't want you guys to, you know, just consider even, you know, starting out at community colleges, because I took a lot of great engineering classes when I started working, because I ended up working at NASA. So I wanted to build up my engineering skills, because I actually started out as a computer engineer. And then I wanted to get my master's degree, and I wanted to learn more of the business side of engineering, so I got my master's degree in engineering management at George Washington University. Why STEM? I think I said part of it is because I love mathematics. For some reason, I just really, really like math. And also winning that contest when I was in the 6th grade also kind of encouraged me as well. And I knew that majoring in math or a technical field was the way to go, because I didn't want to major in something and not get a job. You know, I felt like that was a waste of money and time, and I knew that in the STEM field, and most people, you probably know, STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. So I knew that being in the technical field, that I would find a job and make good money. So that was my mindset as a young person. So let me tell you a little bit about my work experience. I started out at NASA Langley Research Center. NASA has 10 centers and NASA headquarters as well. But I started out at NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. And I just want to say that, you know, growing up in Delaware, I didn't really know anything about NASA because we don't have a NASA facility here in Delaware. So only thing I knew about NASA was when the space shuttle occasionally went up and everybody, you know, saw it on the news. But I was not exposed to engineering. I didn't even know about FAME. I was the first person in my family, my whole family, to graduate from college. My uncle went to college, but I was the first one to graduate from college, so I really wasn't in the know about the FAME, the engineering. But when I went to Hampton, that's how I learned more about engineering and NASA, because in Hampton, they have a NASA facility. So being from Wilmington, Delaware, my goal is to expose everybody that I can from Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, or any part of Delaware about NASA, to let them know that they can have that opportunity too to work for a world-class organization like NASA. I want to ask you something. Does anybody, one of the young people in here, we don't have a lot of young people, but do anybody know what NASA stands for? Anybody want to? Okay.
National Aeronautics Space Industry.
Yep. Did you know that? Well, I had a little prize for you. Anybody, did the young people hear what he said? Anybody, any young person want to give it a shot too?
Come closer.
I'm giving him a poster. So one of the big missions now is called Artemis, and this is going to be the next big NASA program. Well, it is the big NASA program now, and they're planning to go to Mars in 2024. Right. So I'm going to give him this poster for him. We have another person that want to, what does it stand for? Administration. All right, good try. So I had one more poster, and I would get to stand up so everybody can see. So see you for saying and being so brave. Give him a hand. Let me give you a couple of things. And I'm giving him a sticker of SWAT, which I'm gonna talk a little bit about. It's one of the satellite missions that I worked on. So, a again, as I said, I started out at NASA Langley. I worked with wind tunnel testing at the High Reynolds Numbers Aerodynamics branch, which we call, the facility is called the National Transonic Facility. I'm gonna tell you a bit more about that. And then also, the structural dynamics branch, which dealt more with, then I got to deal more with like shuttle tires and landing gear and all that kind of work. And then I decided to transfer to Goddard Space Flight Center, which is in Greenbelt, Maryland. And the reason why I wanted to move actually was because my mother had retired, and this is my mother right here. Raise your hand, wait. She had retired, and I knew it was time to move, back closer to home. It was like a 5-hour drive from Hampton, so now I'm less than 2 hours away from home. And so I was able to transfer and get a job at NASA Goddard, and there I'll begin on the space side. At NASA Langley, I worked in the aeronautics, dealing with anything associated with flight, with airplanes and different things like that. But at Goddard is a space flight center. So then I transferred, and it wasn't too bad, like changing from the aeronautics side to the aerospace side. It was actually exciting because it was, something new. But I, was a mission manager there for several satellite missions and spacecraft missions. So I just want to say one thing. When we think of spacecraft, we think of astronauts, right? So you have your shuttles, which are the manned spacecraft, but I worked in the unmanned spacecraft, which are like satellites. They kind of, like the ones I worked with was Earth science, dealing with weather patterns and different things like that. And then now I'm currently working at NASA headquarters. Like I mentioned, it was 10 NASA centers. So headquarters oversee all of those centers. And I'm so excited because they named NASA headquarters after Mary Jackson. So it's now Mary W. Jackson NASA headquarters, and I'm so happy about that. She is a black woman from Hidden Figures. So I'll tell you more about that too coming up. So I wanted to, especially the young people, I was hoping there would be more young people here today, but to let you know that in grade school, college, pros, even in the workforce, we have mascots. And the mascot at the National Transonic Facility was a polar bear. And the reason why it is a polar bear is because the National Transonic Facility is a cryogenic wind tunnel. They use liquid nitrogen to cool down that tunnel so they can get high Reynolds numbers. And I'll tell you why that's important. So this is a wind tunnel, if you never saw a wind tunnel. And I also want to, if anybody ever wants to tour NASA, especially when we finish this pandemic, just get in touch with Anaya, and I'll try to work something out so you can see some of this and be exposed to this, because I know here in Delaware, we're really not. But this is a pressurized continuous flow wind tunnel, and that little section right there that's open, that's where you would mount a scaled down aircraft or any type of model, but mostly it's dealing with aeronautics and dealing with flight. This here, can't see it too well, but I'm inside of that wind tunnel. And if anybody saw Hidden Figures, you remember when Janelle Monáe was playing Mary Jackson and how her heel got stuck in that wind tunnel? So this is a wind tunnel right here. And we know that they will not start no wind tunnel up with somebody in there, but they have to be dramatic for the movie. But so that's what that's the test area of that particular wind tunnel. But I talked about cryogenics and cooling down the wind tunnel. So, in order to get high Reynolds numbers, which is one of those numbers associated with flight, it's dealing with viscous fluids in the air, and you hear Mach number, it's dealing with speed, right? So, in order to get flight similarity, you have to match Reynolds number along with Mach number as the same as in an actual flight. And what I mean is, in a wind tunnel, you have say this is the model, it's stationed, right? And then you have the wind passing through, right? And then in the air, you have an airplane just flying through those, all that viscous fluids, different things like that. So to get realistic flight similarity, you have to match the Reynolds number and Mach number in that wind tunnel with the actual flight Reynolds number and Mach number. So that way you can have true flight, true aerodynamic similarities, and that's why cryogenics, why it's a cryogenic wind tunnel in order to get those flight similarities. And these here, so down the bottom, this yellow shows that before using liquid nitrogen to cool down the tunnel, they was not meeting the actual flight path, which is this curve right here, this line here. So with liquid nitrogen, they can go way beyond and meet any type of flight path as possible. And some of these numbers are actual aircraft, like the C-17 and the Boeing 757. I remember when I first started working there, I actually worked on the Boeing 750, I think it was the 757 at the time. And now I'm actually flying in that airplane, and I actually have say in it, right? Because I worked with the research side of it in wind tunnels. So some of the work that I work with, actually experiencing it, and some of this future work, some of you young people are going to be involved in, like some of these satellite missions, and you're going to be saying, wow, I worked on those areas. And this right here, and mostly was dealing with is a high rental number, but yeah, they have to consider lift, because they actually, like when the airplane is in that wind tunnel, they do have to pitch, and lift and all of that too as well. And as they lift and pitch, they have to account for the drag and all of that. But they mostly, it is mostly concentrating on the high rental tunnels, this particular tunnel. They have several wind tunnels. Yep.
So, how does NASA, your reference to the Boeing airplanes and some others, how does NASA and what NASA does play into like the private airlines? Like, I don't understand the intersection.
Okay. Well, first of all, a lot of those places like Boeing are contractors that actually bring their models and bring their designs to NASA, because NASA, the government doesn't pay them. Charge them, so they can come. Actually, they do have to, sometimes now they have to pay for some of the testing, because they have to pay for, say, the electricity, the power, the manpower, and people that are supporting them. But for the most part, they get to design an airplane, and they get to do some testing at a government facility such as NASA, because NASA is a federal government. And so what some of our bigger contracts are like contracts for like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and just all types of organizations that are, like that deal with aircraft or space.
So they may be contracted to build a new shuttle or something you guys are gonna launch, but they also get the benefit of using your facility to test
Right.
it, so they're using it commercially.
Yep, and also the same as the Department of Defense, which is the military as well. So sometimes they want to test at our facility as well.
And who owns the data?
Well, most of the time it's just when you have to get an agreement. They call them NRA, so that's all getting into like agreements and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So this right here, then I wanted to, because when I worked at NTF, I mostly worked with the data systems, what they call data acquisition systems. And basically, there you're allowed, it's a system that actually captures the data real time. Like when you're testing in these wind tunnels, that data is being captured real time, and that's the system that I maintained and helped, develop. So I worked more on the computer side when I first started out, but then I wanted to get more into being a test engineer, and then I switched over to structures and materials, and I worked at the aircraft landing dynamics facilities, which main focus was dealing with anything associated with landing gear. And this here is a test carriage, so we could put like, just say a shuttle tire in this test carriage, and we can actually use high pressure water to actually propel this test carriage as fast as 250 miles an hour in 28, well, I think it could do it in like 400 feet, it can do it that fast, but the runway was actually about 2,800 feet wide. So you're talking about this big old carriage, going down this track, but it can mimic any shuttle landing. So basically, you can go as fast as 220 miles an hour. That's how fast this carriage is propelling down this track. And so a typical shuttle is somewhere like 214 to 226. So you can mimic any type of landing, in the world. And that's basically what we did. Not just shuttles, but anything associated with landing gear. And, so to stop this big carriage, it was this system we had, the resting gear system is what it was, and this was like a, like a churning, dissipation of energy that would just, once it hit it, it would just, just stop it. I mean, it was really exciting to watch. I mean, a lot of times we would have like teachers there, in the summer, and you see the carriage coming in, you want to fall back because you think it's going to run into you. Although you're not in front of it, but it's just really was exciting to see. Later, I did some tests on this tinsel that caused the resting gear, the carriage, that stopped the carriage. But anyway, we had 5, if you might not can't see as well because it's a small laptop. But you really only needed 3, but I did a tensile test like a load test to see how much load it can withstand before it actually broke. And I wanted to show this because I wanted to show, particularly to a lot of the young people, that when you work, especially in the STEM field, it's a lot of teamwork. I'm going to say 95%, you're not really working, on your own. You're working as a team. And I was the engineer in this picture right here, and these 2 were technicians that were supporting my test. So I had to, being an engineer, I had to come up with the requirements and also come up with the test plan, and they supported me to get that particular test work. So I just wanted to show that there's teamwork involved. And then this is the system that we use to run this facility, and including a data acquisition system. And this was the team some of the team members, most of them were there, but these were the ones there. And STEM, and we're pushing those that are underrepresented in the STEM. So as you can see, I'm the only one, the only African American female, here, with mostly in the male-dominated field. But there's only 2 engineers in here. That was myself and Tom Yeager in the back. But there was another engineer that worked there. Everyone else are electricians, technicians, and they just kind of support, all the work that's being done at that facility. So, when I left NASA Langley, I went to Godard, as I mentioned, in Greenbelt, Maryland, and I got on the space side. So they mostly it's a space flight center. So I was a mission manager for some future satellite missions that was launched in 2021, which last year, and beyond. But I had started working here 10 years ago, so it seemed like such a far, like it was so far away. And look, we passed it, and actually one of them did launch, which was Sector 6. And these all were in pre-formulation before I started, meaning that they had to come up with a viable design plan for this. And I'm the only ones that, like SWAT, which I have some stickers and some are on the table, which stands for surface water and ocean topography. So it's studying like ocean color, and the young people too. Like if you get into science, oceanography is a great area to get into because the ocean tells us a lot about earth science, about weather patterns and adverse weather conditions. So these were just to show you what a satellite, look like. And I also wanted to show that when I went to Godard, I got more into project management, and I was kind of showing like the different phases, at least the NASA phases, which is pre-formulation, phase A, and it's almost like getting ingredients for making cookies, right? So I got this transition here, and then formulation is when you actually come up with the design, the plan, and all these begin with what they call a principal investigator, which is a scientist, right? He does all these, have all these meetings, science community meet, and then the nation decides on what science is priority to look into, and then come up with a project, the technologies that you need to get the science that you want, from these satellite missions. So then you go into implementation, and that's when you actually start building hardware, building the little parts that go with the satellite. And then you launch, which is the operation phase, where you're actually getting the data, seeing the data that you receive from being in space and all of the technology to capture all that data, and then of course disposal, because they in, and then you have to dispose them.
How long do they stay on the water?
Usually, they have a when you do these projects, they only supposed to last for 3 years, but they last way over 3 years. Most of them was only supposed to last 3 years. They've been up there 10 years. So, but technically, they have to make that they built to make at least the minimum, 3-year period. I hope I'm not going too long. Okay. So also now, let's talk about where I'm at now. I'm at NASA headquarters. I started the position at NASA headquarters in 2019. And I'm just so excited because that's the actual top of NASA. That's where, headquarters is overseeing all of the centers. But what's most exciting is that they named it after Mary W. Jackson. And I just want to say that I was going to say it coming up, but when I first started my career, I lived with Mary Jackson. So I'm excited. Working there too. I could be at another center and they said, oh, they didn't have this. I still would have been excited, but to be working there. And also I like to say too is that, I started out in aeronautics at NASA Langley, then I went into aerospace. And I've been in aerospace since 2005, right, until 2019. Full circle, I'm back in aeronautics. So at NASA headquarters, I'm working at the Aeronautics Research Mission Director. So now I'm back in aeronautics. And it was really exciting seeing some of the people that I started out with. They was like, Angie, you remember? So it was just really cool. So, and of course, I've been at NASA I've been at NASA for about 33 years. So I'm going to be retiring soon, so that's just a blessing to be able to go full circle like that. So here I'm at ARMD, which is the Aeronautics Research Mission Director at headquarters. I'm a capabilities manager. And the capabilities are airplanes, flight assets, high-end computing, which are like, supercomputers that do a lot of, research and risk reduction before they actually fly, some of the aircraft designs. And then also facilities, which include wind tunnels, and you guys got to see what a wind tunnel was, laboratory simulations, and then the workforce that support those capabilities. So that's my role now. So now, the last I want to talk about is, and that's not last because I do want to give you some tips, is I want to talk about my personal connections with the women of Hidden Figures. Did anybody see, who saw Hidden Figures? Who didn't see Hidden Figures? Okay, you have to see that movie. I mean, it seems like it's a long movie, but once you start watching it, it is just so, and I'm not just saying that because I have a personal connection. The movie is awesome. And Janelle Monáe, she actually played Mary Jackson. And as I mentioned, I lived with Mary Jackson and her family when I first started my career. Her husband, Gilbert Jackson, who we affectionately call Jack, actually taught me how to cook.
All right.
And nobody ever asked, well, what did he teach you? What stands out is he taught me how to bake a turkey. And this is before fried turkeys, right? So, he taught me how to cook a turkey so it would be all dry, but he was an excellent cook. And they just took me in like I was part of the family.
Amen.
And Taraji, she played Katherine Johnson, and I know Katherine Johnson as well. I knew her, and I did not know Dorothy Bond. That's the only person I didn't know her. And of course, even when I started at NASA, Mary Jackson had already retired. She wasn't. None of these people were working there. So this is Mary Jackson and myself. This is a throwback. And this is her granddaughter, Wanda. And so I knew that there was a book coming out, and a movie coming out about Hidden Figures. But I didn't, it just started me, made me start thinking about how in the world did I even get to know Mary Jackson? So it made me reflect. I didn't even really remember. But this was at my college from Hampton University. This was at my graduation dinner. So I knew Mary Jackson before I started working at NASA. And how I met her was through her pastor. Her pastor was a student counselor, and we became very good friends. He really looked out for me. being away from home, and we know how a lot of people from Wilmington do not want to get out of Delaware for some reason. So my first time leaving away from home, and so Mary Jackson was a very devout member of his church, and that's how I met her. So that's how it happened. And so when he knew that I got a job at NASA, and I actually started out as a NASA contractor for about a year before I actually started working for NASA. But he must have had a conversation with Mary Jackson because she offered to let me live with her and her family. So that was really cool. So this is another picture of Mary Jackson that I had, and this was at an event. I believe it was at it's an organization called the National Technical Association, which did a lot of STEM events. Before STEM was even an acronym, we always had a passion to encourage, young people to get into math and science and engineering, and this was one of the events there. This picture is a picture of Katherine Johnson in Hampton, Virginia, at their Virginia Air and Space Museum. They had this bench there, and this was the ceremony where they erected a bench in her name, and that's where this was. And that same weekend, they had a birthday party for Katherine Johnson. This was her 97th birthday at the time. And I just want to say that I knew Katherine Johnson and her husband. Okay, I knew Katherine Johnson and her husband because they were so involved in STEM events, and that's in NTA. And that's her husband, Jim Johnson. And this is Mary Shelley, the person who wrote the book Hidden Figures. And this, I didn't know her until the event ceremony, but I knew her parents. Her father, Robert B. Lee, he actually is a retired engineer from NASA. And her mother is a professor at Hampton University, but she edited my thesis when I got my master's degree.
Right.
So it was just so personal to me when that movie came out. Wow. And just lastly, I just want to say, the tips that I wanted to leave was, wrap up, is just believe in believe in yourself. Don't let nobody tell you can't do anything. Sometimes it can be your parent because you might have big dreams and they might get crazy. But just don't, believe in yourself, educate yourself. There's one time when you can get away without having a college degree, but it's really important that you have some kind of paper, and also set long-range goals, because if you don't really have any focus. So this helps you to stay more focused. And then also integrity, and that's a word that we don't even hear. Kids probably don't even know what integrity is, and it's basically doing the right thing when people are not looking.
Amen.
And so basically that is so important, because when you have that integrity, you become trustworthy, for different organizations, where, I've worked on projects where I was the spacecraft manager at one place, and my budget was $150,000, it might have been $150,000 I think a month that they were just spending, it was a $2 million, the whole thing was a $2 billion project. So having that integrity, makes you more trustworthy. Also, eliminate the negative. Eliminate the drugs. A lot of people think, and even particularly marijuana, it just makes me so mad because so many people are just stuck on marijuana and they don't realize that it really can mess you up. It kind of mess up your thinking, your focus. And even though I know it's free in a lot of places, there's still a lot of jobs that are still doing drug tests, and you'll get busted, even for literal. So just eliminate any kind of negative, the wrong crowd. And then if you do, you have victory ahead. And last thing I want to say, just elevate above the negative. When I was working at NASA, I would see a lot of disgruntled people because they were treated unfair, and they would just kind of stop producing. They would kind of stay in their little. And I decided I was not going to ever be like that. And trust me, I've been treated unfair a lot of times, and I overcame it. I decided I'm going to stay a nice person. I'm not going to let them make me bitter and change who I am.
Yes.
And you can do the same thing. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. A lot of great next up, we'll be having Mr. Elworth Brown.
Everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ellsworth Brown. I go by Brownie, and I am also from Wilmington, Delaware. Very proud to be from Wilmington. Start off at Eastlake, for those who've been around here a while. Eastlake, and Walnut Street, West Side, Broome. Went to George Gray, went to Byron, and graduated from Howard High. Six blocks away from here, right? So I'm very excited. So I'm going to talk about my experience with STEM. I wish you could have showed you. I wanted to see all that Andy showed, and I actually went to the wind tunnel. I know what she's talking about. I saw the ramp, all that stuff. So I was excited because when I got the landing, I looked her up and she was there. I'm going to talk about my Air Force experience, intelligence community, and then financial services, and how STEM related to that. So how long have I been in the STEM areas? What I'm going to talk about. My introduction to STEM, the career fields, what it's like being a minority in STEM, and then words of encouragement. So I've been in the STEM field for over 40 years, and it really started out in high school, and that was with carpentry. 27 years in the Air Force, 11 years in the intelligence community. I'm still part of that right now. And then I've been a licensed professional in financial services for 9 years. So I don't know if y'all can see that or not, but it's a picture of me in a bigger contest back in 1980. And some of the things here you don't see is like, saws and circumference, stuff like that. And then on the bottom here, I have a picture of, sine, cosine, tangent. And so with STEM and mathematics, I didn't even know anything about, STEM wasn't even a word back then, but when I went to Howard High, I got like D's in algebra first year, C's the second year. But when I got to geometry, straight A's. Why? Because I could associate angles and circles and all that stuff. But that's where it began for me. I wasn't working. And this is a picture of a house. It's got a lot of, it's kind of like a log cabin. It's got circles and stuff like that. And this is a picture of a circle. But I got, sine, tangent, degrees, radians, all of the different measuring tools that in the engineering world, that's what we did. And I didn't know anything about that. But when I got to taking calculus and stuff like that, it just clicked, right? Couldn't stand math and that stuff, but as I got into it, I began to appreciate it. In my Air Force career, 27 years, I started off as an aircraft electrician. It's kind of like the military says, they'll teach you what you need to know. You don't have to go to college, they'll teach you. So I learned about Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's laws, and all these other laws. I didn't have a degree. And it took a while for me to catch up because I was a slow reader. And I just, I remember as a freshman at Howard, I was like, so what, the A squared plus B squared plus C squared? It means nothing to me. It's just words, it's just letters. I'm like, what is this stuff, right? But I picked it up, right? So in the Air Force, I learned about electronic flow. I also learned about pressurization, about fuel systems, hydraulic systems. Like Andy's talking about landing gears. I control landing gears. I pressurized the aircraft. I did all kinds of stuff in this STEM field. And wasn't a lot of black people in there doing that, but that's what I did. Let's see, change the picture here. Yeah, so this little picture of me down in Howard Air Force Base, Panama. I worked on UH-1s, started off on tankers, and which are air refuelers. They refuel aircraft when they're flying in the air. And the dynamics that Andy talked about, being able to, fly a little boom down to another aircraft and fuel at about 300 miles an hour is not an easy feat. So this is the F-4 aircraft over in Germany. I've worked on those. So these aircraft, we were just like maybe 3 minutes from West Germany. from East Germany, so we had to be ready to be able to fight at any given time. I worked on the landing gear systems, the missile systems, powering all that stuff up. I flew on the aircraft. I did Mach 1, so ain't so about Mach 1. That's just awesome, you know. I was like, what you want to do, Brown? I said Mach 1. That's all. I didn't care about dynamic. Yes, sir. I did real well. Until we started pulling G's on me. I pulled like 8 G's, and my vision was like, he's like, can you breathe? Can you breathe? I'm like, you go to 100% oxygen. I'm already there, you know. And I got this thing, got the chance to fly and all that stuff. So, but being a black man and working on aircraft, which I didn't ever think that I could ever do something like that. But that's what I did in the first couple years of my career. And then the S in STEM, so we had to train to be able to fight in a chemical environment. So here it is, being able to take these poisonous things and be able to filter it out and still launch and recover and work on aircraft. I mean, that is in the STEM, I don't know what it is, but being able to do that, right? And a lot of us who were prior military got stuck into like a not mustard gas, but like a tear gas thing. They made us put it on while we're crying to see that it actually works, right? But I did that. This is the B-52s in Guam, United States territory, and probably my most challenging aircraft that I worked on. Very small cabin. This thing could cruise at about 65,000 feet, and I would pressurize it so that it probably feels like it's only at 7,000 feet. It could carry a lot of missiles. It was very scared. People in Vietnam were very scared of this thing when they saw it coming. I deployed to Prince Sultan Air Base. Excuse me, getting confused there. I did go to Prince Sultan Air Base for 9/11 area. But the first Gulf War, I was at Morón Air Base, Spain, and first time I got a chance to see one of these bad boys fully loaded, taken off, and they went down and bombed out there. So, but fuel systems, landing gear systems, crazy. I could move fuel around. I mean, just understanding how many thousands of pounds of fuel. Everything is still math-based, right? And so, a lot of the stuff that you learn in college about math, you'll do a lot of this stuff for the young kids. You'll do all that stuff. And I'm not saying it's not important, but once you finally get out there and doing your job in STEM, like Angie says, you got so many people around you, and mostly everything's on computers, so it's a rite of passage, but you got to understand the math behind it, the physics behind it, and also behind it so that when you work with certain tools, we don't even think about it, but we understand all the principles behind the technology to make it work. And so, I think you might have saw it. There was a time, like Angie, I work at the headquarters for the Air Force, so I represented 104,000 men and women worldwide, aircraft maintenance, and at times represented 200,000 people worldwide out of the Pentagon. And it was an honor. I'm like little old me from Wilmington, Delaware, traveling all around the world, inspecting people, looking at the work they did that's kind of STEM related. So this is me with the general. There's two of me, two chiefs, one with the general. This is looking at the bomb area. I remember being in Saudi Arabia, seeing the bunker. You probably heard of bunker busters, bombs just all over the place. I've been in a room with 3 nuclear warheads. I mean, I've been around some crazy stuff, right? And a lot of it's math-based, right? So I have an opportunity to do some very cool things. And this is in my retirement ceremony. It's right there by the Pentagon and by Arlington National Cemetery. And so with Air Force experience, I would say that with the math that I took, the things that I learned from the Air Force, I got my first degree, and I got all the way to my master's degree, working in the Air Force and traveling around the world, deploying for war, stuff like that, and it's been an honor. And the cool part is that, I got a chance to walk in rooms, and it's a room full of white people, and I'm the only brother in the room. And I got the knowledge, and I got the power to turn things on or off. I control career fields from basic training to when they graduate, something like 14 career fields, hydraulics, fuels, metals, test equipment, all that stuff. Little Delaware. I'm no better than any of us. You young kids, I'm telling you, y'all got the goods, right? Be proud of being from Wilmington, Delaware.
All right.
So the intelligence community, I started off at the Department of Homeland Security, Cyber Command, NSA, National Security, NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, and then work at Defense Intelligence Agencies. And all these places top secret security clearance, polygraph, I've done all that stuff, right? And STEM everywhere. And there's room for us. They need people like us. They need the diversity of the way we think. They need to see people like us out there. And I mean, there's things that I can't even talk about, but being able to see cool satellites, that's my Angie satellites, and satellites around the world looking at what's going on, like in Russia right now. We got a lot of people focused on that. Things have changed over the years, but just let you know that you belong. I don't care who you are, of any color, race, creed, but we belong there. So I wish we had that up there, but some of the satellites that I have people that was controlling, you know, at a certain point, once you get really good at what you're doing, as Andy talked about the integrity part, they start asking you to lead. And like her, I control billion-dollar projects, stuff like that. Some of these satellites that are up there, take them 10 years to get them done, but they test them on planes and environments like Andy's talking about, and then they actually put out in space. Those phases she's talking about, I've been in parts of that. And STEM and financial services. So I'm licensed insurance, licensed mutual funds and annuities and rollovers, and then also I help people with loans to buy a house. And there's money everywhere, right? And so, you know, the math is in how long do you live? You're a woman, you're a guy, how much you weigh, all the actuary tables that are done to calculate how much they're going to charge you, math-based. As far as saving money, I'm just saying that I wish that we would teach how money works to kids at elementary school. It's just 6th grade math, right? I've had calculus, multivariable calculus, linear algebra, all that stuff. It has nothing to do with growing your money. It's real easy. You just start young and how do you invest it, right? And then for selling houses, you know, I think the big one I closed maybe $700,000. You know, I closed a couple loans last year, and I'm doing it all part-time. This is all part-time stuff. And I'm transitioning to this by the end of the year. So, to me, what's it like being a minority in STEM? I'm very proud. Very proud. Sometimes I walk in and I'm the only brother or maybe a sister there, and very proud to be there. And to prove the stereotypes wrong. That's right. Right? Sometimes you walk in and they're like, what you doing here? Or when I walk in a room and the sister goes, it's a brother. Right? And I go on stage and it's like 600 people there. I mean, I've been like Angie, different places. You was asking about contractors and Boeing, stuff like that. So I'm in north of Grumman in Florida. It's like engineers everywhere, and these guys are doing things wrong. And finally, I get up and go to the stage, and I start saying things. And the guy goes, Air Force, where the hell you been? Right? So I'm an enlisted guy, Chief Master, that's the highest rank, but we just wasn't there. Our focus was on F-22. This is the Joint Strike Fighter, and they're like, you guys have been asleep at the wheel. And I started telling these guys what's wrong, and then a pilot stands up and said, you need to listen to him, because he's right. We was talking about ejection seats. I control those two, right? So like, you pull that out of Mach 1 and pop the chute. You know, the seat comes out, just got to slow down first, do the drags and stuff that Andy's talking about, and then you pop the chute. But I was telling them what they were doing wrong, and they wasn't listening finally. But being able to get up there in front of them, and then I'm the only brother. That's right. And they're like, whoa. You know, and then after that, they come talking to you, you know, like, oh, you know what you're talking about. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Andy? And then the last part, just be an example for this generation, right? Be an example, I mean, not just black and brown people, but white people too. Hispanics, I mean, they come up to you, and sometimes, you know, they come from environments and they don't know. And I've actually mentored a lot of white people along the way. You know, that I used to get all the bad people. Hey, go to Chief Brown, go to Sergeant Brown. I used to get all the losers they would give me, and I had to train them, and I made them better technicians, better mechanics. Yeah. So, words of encouragement for all of you here. Everyone in this room who hears my voice, you are a genius at something. Yes. I'm going to say it again. Everyone in this room is a genius at something. But school would have you believe it's got to be reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that's not so. So the scientists say there's more than just 9 geniuses, and y'all can't read this, but the geniuses are like, if you ever get a chance to do what you love, like this gentleman there, what he loves, you know, he'll never work a day in his life, and hopefully his art will go well. The young lady that's singing, she's not here. If you ever do something and you're genius, like some of these say naturalists, people who are just in tune with the earth, musicians, people who understand beats and sing and stuff like that. You have people that kinetic, who, you know, like Michael Jordan with his body, or Serena Williams, stuff like that. So there are different things that people do that are geniuses, and if you could ever capture that and turn that into a business and make money, you'll never work, and you'll be good at your craft. So I don't want you to think that just because, you know, you take a test and you don't score well, that you're stupid, or you don't qualify. I took a lot of tests that I failed, you know, and I just got back up. You know, and I had a lot of white mentors like, Ground, get up. I know you pissed, you know, but I'm not gonna say this from women's team, but a lot of times I want to punch somebody first, right? And like Angie, I mean, I've been in places where I was just disrespected in so many kind of ways. I just held my tongue, right? The best I could. I didn't always. I did let go sometimes. But I need you to know that you're a genius in some kind of capacity. Some people speak a lot of languages, like my daughter, she speaks like 7 languages. I don't know where she got it from. But I played Beethoven when she was a baby girl all the time. Mozart, Chopin, all that stuff. You are a genius in something, and if you can never find out what that is, just understand that you're great. And words of encouragement. All right, y'all can't read this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, right? So, STEM. STEM is a natural part of our inherited DNA. When much of the known world was living in primitive conditions, the ancient Egyptians were inventing writing, advancing sciences as mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and they developed ways to measure time and distance and applied their knowledge to monumental architecture. I got a classmate who's going to talk about that when he gets up here, right? So STEM, science, as Angie said, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. For me, mathematics is the foundation. It is the foundation to the S, science, to the T, and to the E, engineering. Don't be afraid of mathematics. I was scared of it for a while, but I remember, as Angie talked about community college, I was at this community college. I went all the way back after I graduated from Howard, right? And my education had holes in it. I took Math 10 all the way up to first year of calculus. The only brother that did that at that school. And the instructors were like, hey, Brown, come get out of the Air Force, come work for me, you know, and we need people that look like you teaching it so they can see that it can be done. Right? And so there was this thing on the wall that I memorized. I can say it now, but I'm just going to read this. Mathematics is an unparalleled model of an exact science, the epitome of creative art and language necessary for a modern world. Everything that's technology-based has got math in it. But you're smart. Your brain is, well, we got some supercomputers pretty close. It is the most powerful thing on earth. As you walk, your mind is calculating how you balance your leg from one foot to the other, right? And you watch how a baby starts to learn how to walk like that. I want you to understand that you're always dealing with math. How much pressure you use to butter your bread, it's all calculated in your mind. And so the author of that, I don't know who it was, but I used to always read that thing. So fear not STEM. Fear not STEM. It's okay to get a little apprehensive, because usually it's the math that gets people scared. But do it anyway. Your knees are knocking. Find somebody that can help you understand what it is. I want you to understand that math is nothing to be afraid of, because we, the great architects of the world, invented it. Black people brought this to life. Pi r squared, the pyramids. We can go out in space, but we cannot right now. This technology, these people cannot build pyramids and some things that the Incas did right now to the exact science within hundredths of an inch. We don't have technology to do that right now, but we can go out in space. Wow. So with that, I'll open up to any questions. Take 1 or 2 questions. If I have a question, I'm willing to answer.
You have your business card here?
Come on, y'all can't be scared of me. Somebody got to have a question.
Do you have your business card here?
I do.
I got a comment.
Okay.
I'm so proud of you, brother, and keep up the good work, and thank God. Thank God.
You.
You know, nothing you doing here. Question, during what period did you serve in the Air Force?
From 1982 to 2009.
Okay, good.
I look too young, right?
Yeah.
So before we end today, I'm going to share a little bit about Avi I.T. So, I'm the founder and CEO of Avi I.T. My journey to the computer science field was rough, just like many others that look like me in the field. For starters, I did not have a laptop until the 10th grade, and home Wi-Fi is pretty expensive, so I fell into a statistic along with 14 million other Black people. Luckily though, I was able to overcome the digital divide with the help of the Girls Who Code Summer Immersions program, and now I work part-time as a coding teacher. But what about those who can't reach the digital divide, or those with resources but no qualified means to learn about computer science? In my situation, I had to apply for a very selective program with a long application process and was first waitlisted. This was very discouraging since I already felt like I didn't belong in the computer science field. The program was awesome, but it had very strict attendance policies. It required for one to have reliable transportation in order to be in attendance for 7 weeks, every weekday for 7 hours. And if a student missed 2 days, they would be removed from the program. This meant even if the student were accepted into the program, it might be difficult for them to meet the rigid requirements, especially if they had to work. Even now, working as a computer science teacher, I have parents that come up to me and tell me their kid is interested, but they can't afford it or don't have transportation. It hurt me to watch kids forced to turn away from their passions due to cost, transportation issues, and unreasonable requirements, so I knew I needed to come up with a solution, and Avi I.T was the answer. Avi I.T is a nonprofit organization that works to introduce computer science to students for free through summer camps, pop-up events, community partnerships, and tech drives. We travel to underfunded schools and community centers to provide our classes, and we hope to mitigate the diversity gap in the computer science field by ridding all barriers, including financial and resource barriers that may stop parents from enrolling their children in computer science classes. So why is a program like ours so important? I want you to take a moment and think of the name of 3 well-known tech people. I'll give you 5 seconds.
Bill Gates, Bezos,
yeah. So now let's try this again, except think of 3 well-known tech people that are Black. I'll give you 10 seconds to start. So, you didn't do very well. I did not think of anyone in round 2, but in round 1 I thought of Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates. And so this could be, maybe that's just me or everyone here, or maybe it's because when you Google the words computer scientist, your screen is predominantly filled with white males. 67% of Black students say that computer science classes are available at their school versus 88% of white students. This is why Avi I.T is so important. We travel to underfunded schools and community centers to provide free coding classes. Unfortunately, these places are predominantly filled with students of color, which may explain why there's a lack of racial diversity in the computer science field. This lack of diversity can and has created problems within software and can be accredited to the racial biases found in the U.S. justice system's use of facial recognition software used to predict criminality or worker competence. This has led many organizations, including Google Inc. and the National Science and Technology Council, to amplify or attempt to fix this problem. Definitive evidence suggests that a solution to this issue could be a rich, diverse workplace. This is why at Avi I.T, we strive to mitigate the diversity gap by introducing computer science to kids of all backgrounds, especially minorities, BIPOC, and low-income students, and by distributing technology to alleviate the digital divide. We believe that building racial diversity in the STEM field can create change in our world and contribute to ending systemic racism. This is because a racially diverse computer science field could eliminate problems such as the algorithmic biases found in artificial intelligence. Moreover, if more BIPOC look into receiving a degree in computer science and begin working in the field, the cycle of economic marginalization could end and future generations could have a chance at a higher quality of life. We are already in the process of fighting to end this cycle. 94% of our students say they plan to continue learning how to code and would pursue computer science. A program such as ours does not exist in Delaware nor in the surrounding areas that is specifically for minorities and includes kids of all ages and experience levels. I'm aware of this through my personal experiences, research, and work in the field as a computer science teacher. Girls Who Code, Khan Academy, and Code Academy could be considered our direct competitors. Our competitors often require applications to be considered for their programs, do not offer live instruction with lessons tailored to age groups, and require that a student has access to a device and transportation. The main factor that separates us from similar organizations is that we are where the kids are. We travel to underfunded schools and community centers and provide all of the necessary resources such as Wi-Fi, devices, and transportation. We even host tech drives where we collect old devices, fix them, and distribute them to families in need, as well as our students to allow them to learn with us virtually. So we actually plan to provide our classes and curriculums outside of the United States as well. We are currently in the process of working with a new school called the City Secondary School that opened up this month in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe. And this school was referred to us by one of our partners. We plan to train the teachers to teach our computer science curriculums, and we'll offer our virtual program to the school and their community as well. Although it may seem like we would face language barriers, my board members and I speak and understand many languages, and fortunately in Zimbabwe, English is the medium of instruction. In 2021, we held successful events, but to fully achieve our goals, we'll need more funding. We have so many amazing connections in the community, however, this alone is not enough. The data exists, the problem has already begun, and systemic racism is far from ending. So remember, when you donate to Avi I.T, you're helping the whole community. Thank you.